There was a grandmother in your family, maybe not yours specifically, but someone's, who could walk into a kitchen with almost nothing in the pantry and walk out an hour later with a pie that made everyone go quiet. No recipe card, no measuring cups lined up on the counter, just memory and feel and the knowledge of what she had. 25 of those pies are almost completely gone now, and the last one on this list is the one that shocks people the most, because the government is actually part of why it disappeared. These are 25 forgotten pies Grandma made without a recipe. Let's count them down. Number 25, vinegar pie. When lemons were expensive or just completely out of reach, especially during the Depression years, Grandma reached for the vinegar jug instead. A splash of cider vinegar mixed with sugar, butter, and eggs went into a pie shell and baked down into a custard that tasted uncannily like lemon pie. Not a little bit like it, genuinely close enough that most people eating it had no idea what the secret ingredient was. Think about that for a second. You're sitting at a Sunday table, eating something that tastes bright and citrusy and sweet, and the whole flavor is coming from something you'd normally splash on a salad. That's the kind of kitchen instinct that doesn't get passed down in cookbooks because Grandma never wrote it down. She just knew that acid is acid, and sugar and butter can do the rest of the work. It's one of the clearest examples of Depression-era resourcefulness turning a plain pantry staple into something that belonged on a Sunday table. Number 24, prune pie. This one gets written off immediately by anyone who hears the name, and that's exactly why it disappeared. Dried prunes simmered down with sugar and spices into a thick, jam-like filling that was rich and deeply flavored, closer in spirit to a raisin pie than anything you'd expect. It was a winter pie, built for the months when fresh fruit was either gone or too expensive. Grandma also leaned on it because prunes were considered good for digestion, so the pie had a practical reputation beyond just dessert. That combination of function and flavor kept it on the table for generations. And the thing is, the filling itself is genuinely good. It's got a depth that fresh fruit pies don't always have, because dried fruit concentrates everything: the sweetness, the tartness, the body. But the name was always going to be a problem, and once grocery stores started stocking fresh fruit year-round, people stopped reaching for it and never looked back. Number 23, brown sugar pie. A close relative of chess pie and sugar cream pie, but built specifically around dark brown sugar, which gave the filling a deeper, almost molasses-like flavor that white sugar just can't replicate. Eggs, butter, and a splash of vanilla rounded it out. No fruit, no fuss, just a simple custard that Grandma could pull together on any afternoon without running to the store for a single thing. The beauty of it was that dark brown sugar does something different when it bakes. It gets richer and slightly caramelized at the edges, and the whole filling takes on this warm, almost toffee-like quality that you really can't get any other way. It's been almost entirely overshadowed by the more famous custard pies on this list, which is a shame, because the flavor is genuinely its own thing and doesn't need any help from fruit or spice to be interesting. Number 22, molasses pie. Similar in spirit to Shoofly pie, but stripped down even further. No crumb topping, no layers, just a straightforward custard built around dark, robust molasses. It was common in households where molasses was cheaper and more accessible than refined sugar, especially across the South. What's remarkable about it is that the filling bakes into something dense and deeply flavored without a single spice being added. The molasses does all the work. It carries a bitterness and a richness that you just can't fake with anything else. And when it sets up in a crust and cools down, it's got this almost gingerbread-like quality, even though nothing in it resembles a gingerbread recipe. It's a pie that's vanished almost entirely as molasses shifted from everyday pantry staple to specialty ingredient that most people only buy once a year for holiday baking, if they buy it at all. Number 21, sorghum pie. Before corn syrup took over the grocery shelf, sorghum syrup was the sweetener that a lot of Southern and Appalachian families pressed themselves from cane grown right on the farm, baked into a pie with eggs and butter. It produced a filling with a deep, almost smoky sweetness, unlike anything you can get from white sugar or corn syrup. Grandma used it because it was what the farm produced, not because she chose it off a shelf. There's a real difference between a sweetener you buy and a sweetener you make. And sorghum carried the whole personality of the land it came from, the soil, the season, the labor that went into pressing it. That flavor doesn't exist in a bottle of Caro. Sorghum farming has nearly disappeared from American agriculture, and the pie went with it, which means most people alive today have never tasted anything close to what this pie actually was. Number 20. Jefferson Davis pie. This one shows up in community cookbooks throughout the South from the early 1900s onward, though its exact origins are still debated. It's a southern custard pie loaded with brown sugar, nuts, and sometimes dates or raisins, similar in spirit to a less sweet pecan pie. It was built for using up whatever nuts and dried fruit were sitting in the pantry, which made it flexible and practical. The kind of recipe that shifted slightly depending on what the kitchen had that week. Some versions leaned heavier on the dates, some swapped in walnuts for pecans, and the result was always a little different, but always recognizably the same pie. It's virtually unknown today outside of a handful of Southern families still holding on to a handwritten recipe from a grandmother or great-aunt, and most people who encounter it for the first time are surprised by how much they like it. Number 19. Angel pie. A meringue shell baked until crisp, then filled with lemon curd, or a fruit filling, and topped with whipped cream. The meringue crust made it feel light and elegant compared to a standard pastry shell, and that elegance was exactly the point. Angel pie was a bridge club dessert, a ladies' luncheon showpiece throughout the 1950s and 60s, the kind of pie Grandma made when she wanted to impress. And it did impress because the meringue shell looks like something that took real skill, even though the process itself is mostly patience. You whip the egg whites, you shape the shell, you bake it low and slow until it's dry all the way through, and then the filling is almost secondary because the presentation does most of the work. It's almost entirely disappeared along with the social events it was made for, and that's a real loss because it's genuinely beautiful and genuinely delicious in a way that feels different from every other pie on this list. Number 18. Transparent pie. A close relative of chess pie, popular in Kentucky, made with butter, sugar, eggs, and cream baked until the filling turned a translucent amber. The name comes from that glassy, see-through appearance once it's set in the shell, and if you've ever seen one fresh out of the oven, the name makes perfect sense. The surface goes almost jewel-like when it cools, this deep, golden amber that looks like it should be more complicated than it is. It was a special occasion pie in a lot of families, precisely because it looked fancier than its humble ingredients suggested. 4 or 5 things from the pantry baked into something that looked like it came from a bakery. It's rarely made outside of a handful of Kentucky counties today, and most people outside of that region have never even heard of it, let alone tasted it. Number 17. Oatmeal pie. This one is basically a poor man's pecan pie, and it works almost perfectly. Rolled oats stood in for expensive pecans in a corn syrup and egg filling, and the result has the same gooey, caramelized texture that people love about the real thing. The oats absorb the syrup and the egg, and then bake down into something that's chewy and rich and sweet in exactly the right way. Families who couldn't afford pecans every holiday season leaned on this instead, and most guests at the table couldn't tell the difference. It's almost entirely forgotten now that pecans are affordable and available year-round, because the whole reason the pie existed was scarcity. The reason it existed is gone, so the pie went with it. But if you make one, you'll understand pretty quickly why it held on as long as it did. Number 16. Egg custard pie. The simplest pie in Grandma's entire rotation: eggs, milk, sugar, a little nutmeg, poured into a crust and baked until just set. No fruit to prep, no filling to cook on the stove, just what was already sitting in the icebox. It was often the first pie kids were taught to make because it was nearly impossible to mess up, and the result was something that tasted like it came from a real kitchen, not a beginner's first attempt. The nutmeg on top was important. It wasn't decoration. It was the whole flavor note that tied everything together, that warm, slightly spicy smell that hit you when the pie came out of the oven. And it was good, genuinely good, the kind of thing that tasted like warmth and a slow Sunday afternoon. It's been almost entirely replaced by more elaborate cream and fruit pies, which is a trade-off nobody consciously made but somehow happened anyway, one holiday at a time. Number 15. Buttermilk pie. Leftover buttermilk from churning butter got turned into a tangy custard pie, thickened with a little flour and baked slow until the top turned golden. It's a close cousin to chess pie, but with a sharper, almost cheesecake-like bite that sets it apart. Families made it specifically because buttermilk didn't keep and had to be used before it went to waste. So the pie wasn't really a choice. It was the solution to a problem. You had buttermilk, you had a few eggs, and some sugar, and you had a pie by dinner time. Almost nobody churns their own butter anymore, so the byproduct disappeared, and the pie disappeared right along with it. If you can find buttermilk pie at a diner in the South, order it. It's worth it, and it'll make you understand immediately why Grandma made it every time she churned. Number 14. Chocolate icebox pie. No oven required, just a cooked chocolate pudding filling poured into a crust and chilled until firm. It became popular once home refrigeration was common enough that a no-bake pie actually made sense, and Grandma made it on the hottest days of summer specifically to avoid turning the oven on. The whole house stayed cool, and there was still dessert on the table. What made the homemade version different from anything you'd buy today was the texture. A properly made chocolate icebox filling has a richness and a density that store-bought pudding cups don't come close to, because it's made with real chocolate cooked down with eggs and cream until it's thick enough to hold a shape when you slice it. Icebox pies, as a category, have almost entirely given way to store-bought frozen desserts, which is a shame because the homemade version is in a completely different league. Number 13. Butterscotch pie. Brown sugar, butter, and cream cooked down on the stovetop into a rich, caramel-toned custard, topped with a cloud of meringue. It stood right alongside chocolate and coconut cream pie as a diner and home kitchen staple through the mid-20th century. Grandma made the filling by feel, watching for the exact moment it thickened, and that instinct was the whole recipe. There was no timer, no thermometer, just the way the spoon dragged through the pot and the smell that told her it was ready. The meringue on top wasn't optional either. It was the contrast that made the whole thing work, the bittersweet toasted peaks against that deep, buttery filling underneath. Butterscotch as a flavor has largely faded from American desserts over the last few decades, which is strange because it's a flavor that's genuinely hard not to love. The pie went with it, and it's a flavor that deserves a comeback it probably won't get. Number 12. Black bottom pie. This one is a showstopper, and it's the most labor-intensive pie on this list. A ginger snap crust, a chocolate custard base, and a rum-spiked cream filling layered on top. It was considered a company's coming dessert in the 1940s and 50s, the kind of pie Grandma only made for special occasions because it took real effort and real time. You had to make the crust, cook the chocolate custard, let it set, then make the cream filling separately, and layer it on top without disturbing what was underneath. Each layer had to be right on its own before the next one could go on. The multiple layers and cooked custard made it more demanding than anything else she baked, which is likely part of why it disappeared. Modern home bakers have a lot of options that don't require that level of commitment. Almost no modern home baker attempts it, and that's genuinely a loss, because when it's done right, there's nothing else like it. We're halfway through, and the pie that's still coming, the one with the most surprising reason for disappearing, is still ahead. Keep watching. Number 11. Lemon icebox pie. sweetened condensed milk, lemon juice, and egg yolks whipped together and chilled. No cooking involved beyond the crust. It became a staple once canned condensed milk hit grocery shelves widely in the mid-20th century because suddenly you had a rich, custardy filling that required almost no work. The condensed milk does something interesting with the lemon juice. The acid actually thickens the mixture without any heat. So you pour it into the crust, put it in the fridge, and pull out something that slices cleanly and holds its shape like it was cooked for an hour. It's a close cousin to key lime pie, but made with whatever citrus was on hand. And in a lot of households, that meant lemon, because it was what the backyard tree or the corner store had available. It's rarely made today outside of the Deep South, where it still shows up occasionally at church potlucks and family reunions. Number 10. Raisin pie, also known as funeral pie. Raisins keep for months without spoiling, which made this pie a reliable go-to no matter the season, especially in winter when fresh fruit wasn't an option. It earned the nickname funeral pie because Amish and Mennonite communities could always have the ingredients on hand to bake one on short notice for a gathering. Raisins in the pantry, sugar on the shelf, a lemon, a crust. There was no scrambling to the store, no hoping the orchard had something ripe. The pie could be assembled and in the oven within the hour, which mattered when a community needed to come together quickly. The filling, simmered raisins with sugar and a little lemon, tastes richer and less sweet than most people expect, with a jammy depth that fresh fruit pies don't always have. It's a pie that's completely dropped out of the modern rotation, and the name alone is probably part of the reason why, because nobody wants to bring a funeral pie to a birthday party. Number 9. Sugar cream pie, Indiana's unofficial state pie, made with nothing more than cream, sugar, flour, and vanilla. No fruit, no eggs in some versions, just a rich, custardy filling that Grandma could make any day of the year because the ingredients never ran out. It's sometimes called Hoosier pie, and it was a way to make something genuinely indulgent without needing anything from the orchard or the root cellar. The filling is almost deceptively simple. You basically stir everything together, pour it into a crust, and let the oven do the work. But what comes out is this silky, barely set custard with a golden top that tastes like someone figured out how to bake pure cream into a dessert. Outside of Indiana, most people have never heard of it. Inside Indiana, people feel strongly about it, the way people feel strongly about regional foods that the rest of the country has overlooked. Number 8. Shoofly pie, a Pennsylvania Dutch staple built on molasses and a crumbly streusel topping, dense enough to shoo the flies away, or so the story goes. It came in wet bottom and dry bottom versions depending on how gooey the filling stayed after baking, and Grandma had a strong opinion about which one was correct. The wet bottom version has a layer of soft, almost syrupy molasses filling under the crumb, and the dry bottom bakes all the way through into something more like a firm cake. They're genuinely different eating experiences, and the argument about which one is right is the kind of thing that could divide a family at a church supper. She didn't need a recipe because the ratio of flour, sugar, and molasses was something she'd done 100 times by feel. It's nearly vanished outside of Amish country, where it still shows up at roadside stands and community sales. Number 7. Water pie. This is the one that stops people in their tracks when they hear about it. Water, sugar, flour, butter, and vanilla poured into a crust and baked until it somehow, against all logic, sets into something that tastes like a custard pie. There's no egg in it, no milk, no cream, just water and pantry staples. And the oven does something to that combination that shouldn't work, but does. The flour gelatinizes in the liquid, the butter rises and browns, and what comes out is a filling that has actual body and sweetness, and a faint vanilla warmth that genuinely resembles custard. It's the ultimate proof of how little Grandma actually needed to make dessert happen. Families leaned on it hardest during years when eggs and milk were scarce or too expensive. It's had a small internet revival recently. people making it out of curiosity more than necessity, but almost no one grew up eating it regularly anymore. And that gap between making it as a novelty and making it because it's all you have says something real about how much has changed. Number 6. Green tomato pie. When the first frost hit before all the tomatoes had ripened, Grandma didn't let them go to waste. She sliced them thin, tossed them with sugar, cinnamon, and a little lemon, and baked them in a crust. Green tomatoes take on a texture eerily close to apples when they're cooked that way, and the result is a pie that most people, if they didn't know what was in it, would assume was apple. The key is that green tomatoes are firm and slightly tart, and when they cook down in sugar and spice, they soften into something that has all the right qualities. The bite, the sweetness, the filling that holds together when you cut a slice. It was a fall tradition in gardening households that's almost entirely died out, because it only made sense when you had a garden and a frost coming and tomatoes that weren't going to ripen in time. Most people today have never heard of a garden vegetable ending up in a dessert pie, and that reaction alone tells you how far this one has fallen. Number 5. Mock apple pie. This one goes back further than most people think. Cracker-based apple pies were showing up in print as early as the 1850s, but the version most people remember came from Nabisco. Ritz crackers made their debut during the Great Depression on November 21, 1934, and they were well received because of their unique buttery flavor and their low selling cost, just 19 cents for a box. The company took full advantage of the Ritz name, which was associated with luxury thanks to Cesar Ritz's hotels, and ran advertisements showing the crackers being served to golfers and passengers on luxury cruise ships. So you had a cracker that felt fancy, cost almost nothing, and somehow tasted buttery enough to pass for something richer than it was. Nabisco promoted a recipe using those crackers, crushed and simmered in a lemon cinnamon syrup, as a stand-in for apples. And somehow, it worked. Generations of families ate it and believed they were eating real apple pie. The filling had the right texture, the right sweetness, the right smell coming out of the oven. Within 3 years, Ritz crackers had become the best-selling cracker in the world. And part of the reason that recipe spread so far is that the cracker itself was everywhere. It's a testament to what spices and sugar and a little lemon can do to a humble cracker when the alternative is no pie at all. Number 4. Chess pie. Nothing but eggs, sugar, butter, and a little cornmeal or flour to hold it together, baked until the top turned a deep golden brown. Southern grandmothers made it because it used ingredients that were always on hand. No fruit required. No trip to the store necessary. If you had a chicken, you had eggs. If you had a cow, you had butter. Sugar kept on the shelf, and that was the whole recipe. The cornmeal is the part that surprises people. It sounds wrong, but it's what gives the filling that slightly firm, slightly grainy texture that sets chess pie apart from a pure egg custard. Without it, the filling would be too soft, too loose. With it, you get something that holds its shape and has a little bit of chew at the top where it caramelizes. The name itself is disputed. Some say it came from just pie, said with a southern drawl. Others have different theories, and nobody has settled it. What's not disputed is that it defined Sunday dinner for decades across the South and has almost completely disappeared from modern home kitchens. Number 3. $1 Million pie. Crushed pineapple, condensed milk, whipped topping, and pecans folded together and chilled in a crust. No baking at all. Despite the extravagant name, it was one of the cheapest, easiest pies Grandma could throw together for a potluck. It became a Southern potluck fixture in the 1960s and 70s precisely because it took 10 minutes and always got compliments. And in a potluck context, that's basically the perfect pie. You didn't have to worry about it being warm. You didn't have to worry about it falling. You just mixed it together, pressed it into a crust, and stuck it in the fridge until you needed it. The name was part of the appeal too. Calling something million when it costs almost nothing to make is exactly the kind of cheerful optimism that showed up a lot in mid-century Southern cooking. It's rarely seen at gatherings anymore, replaced by store-bought desserts that take even less effort but somehow taste like a lot less too. Number 2. Concord grape pie. A short-season specialty from grape-growing regions like upstate New York, made by slipping the skins off Concord grapes and cooking the pulp down into a jammy, intensely flavored filling. It was labor-intensive in a way that only made sense because the grapes were free, growing right in the backyard. The process of slipping the skins is the part that takes time. You squeeze each grape so the pulp pops out, cook the pulp separately to remove the seeds, then cook the skins separately to soften them, and then combine everything into a filling that's thick and deeply purple and tastes like concentrated grape in a way that no store-bought grape product ever does. Grandma made it once a year. For the 2 or 3 weeks the grapes were ripe, and then it was gone until next fall. The flavor is unlike any other pie, deep and almost wine-like. Nothing else tastes quite like a Concord grape, and the pie captures that in a way that eating the grape fresh doesn't even fully do. It's nearly extinct outside of a small pocket of grape country in the Northeast, and that's a genuine shame. Before we get to number 1, if any of these pies are bringing back memories of someone's kitchen, someone's table, drop the name of the pie in the comments. It's worth knowing which ones people still remember and which ones have really been forgotten. And if you want to see more lists like this one, the video on forgotten Sunday suppers from the 1970s is right there, waiting. A lot of the same spirit, the same kind of cooking, the same kind of table. Number 1. Gooseberry pie. Tart, seedy gooseberries were once common in backyard gardens across the Midwest and Northeast, and every summer, Grandma turned them into a sharp, sweet tart pie that people who grew up eating it still talk about. The flavor is hard to describe if you've never had one. Somewhere between a green grape and a tart plum, with a brightness that makes your mouth do something it doesn't do with a blueberry or a strawberry. The filling needs very little help. Sugar, a little thickener, and the gooseberries do the rest, because the fruit itself is so intensely flavored that it carries the whole pie without any spice or citrus additions. Grandma, who had gooseberry bushes in the yard, made this every summer without fail, and the people who grew up eating it remember it the way people remember the best thing from their childhood kitchen. Not as a recipe, but as a feeling. And here's the part that surprises almost everyone. In 1911, the U.S. federal government banned the cultivation of gooseberries because they served as an intermediate host for white pine blister rust, a fungus threatening the timber industry. The white pine blister rust was a devastating fungal disease that required 2 hosts to complete its life cycle, and the timber industry lobbied successfully for a complete ban to protect the enormous white pine logging economy of the Northeast and Great Lakes. Think about that, a berry that had been growing in American gardens since the colonial era, a fruit that grandmothers across the Midwest had been baking into pies for generations, was pulled out of the ground by government crews because a more powerful industry needed it gone. The federal government financed a program to eradicate the species of plants which were the intermediary hosts of blister rust, and they sent crews across the country to spray currants and gooseberries with chemicals that erased the plants. Not just the commercial crops, the backyard bushes too. The government authorized the systematic eradication of millions of ribes plants across the country, and this scorched earth policy nearly erased the fruit from the American culinary consciousness for most of the 20th century. Thanks to later development of new disease-resistant plant varietals, the federal ban was lifted in 1966, leaving individual states to decide what types of ribes plants to allow. But by then, the fruit had been gone long enough that most American families had simply forgotten it existed. This federal ban had a big impact on currants and gooseberries in the United States, as basically they didn't exist for nearly a half-century, according to a berry extension specialist at Cornell University. A half-century is long enough that the generation who grew up eating gooseberry pie raised children who never tasted one, and those children raised children who don't even recognize the name. Today, most states allow gooseberry cultivation, though some, including Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and parts of the Pacific Northwest, still have restrictions or require disease-resistant cultivars only. The pie went with the plant, and the reason is a federal law designed to protect the lumber industry. That's the story almost nobody knows, and it's the reason number one on this list isn't just a forgotten recipe. It's a piece of American history that got erased so quietly that most people never noticed it was gone. 25 pies, and almost every single one of them was built on the same idea. You use what you have, you waste nothing, and you find a way to make something good out of whatever the pantry offers. Vinegar for lemons, crackers for apples, water for eggs, oats for pecans, molasses for sugar, sorghum for corn syrup, green tomatoes for apples. The resourcefulness behind these recipes is something that's genuinely hard to find in a modern kitchen. Not because people aren't capable of it, but because the conditions that made it necessary don't exist the same way anymore. You can drive to a grocery store at 11 at night and buy whatever you need for a pie. Grandma didn't have that option, and because she didn't, she figured out things that nobody would think to figure out today. These pies are the proof of what that looked like in practice, and the fact that most of them are gone is worth paying attention to. If your grandmother made any of these, or if you've actually eaten one, leave a comment below. Subscribe if you want more lists like this one, because there are a lot more forgotten recipes where these came from, and every single one of them has a story worth telling.